talking about the state and the institutional level of things. And again, growing up, and I think a lot of people, angels, the devil, God, I don't know, it's all kind of mushy, it flows together, and it all works out in the end, right? I mean, I think that's how a lot of people feel, because that's how they're meant to feel, because they're meant to feel hurried and rushed, and they need something the neighbor has, and instead of taking the time out to really realize it's much easier to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. So again, at the state level, and we're talking about real people that are not only influenced by evil, but actively participate in a collusive group type of setting.
Are you alluding to like what people call either conspiracy or secret societies or secret groups that do things?
Yes, and I think yes, and I think the key to the key to that is groups. Rarely have I ever heard of one group, and everybody who's ever been secret is part of that group.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like, I call that the YouTube channel of truth, or the YouTube college of truth. Because if you just ask one of those questions and go to YouTube, I mean, you can spend days horrifying yourself on all sorts of truthful, videos out there, which in and of itself you need to ingest with a good respect for a wide margin of error, which doesn't happen. You see people just flaming people left and right. It's a free-for-all on YouTube. but it's valuable from that perspective. I just tangentialized again. So your question.
Let's see. Let's see. We're talking about the state and what's really driving this. Okay, is it market forces that are being? We're trying to define a real person, not just a movement. To try and make it as material as possible. And maybe it's helpful. I said part of what we needed to do was talk about Lucifer, because I think there's so many misconceptions. And very little's ever been told to me. And we've mentioned, the rebellion many times already. And you directed me to this earlier, and I'm just going to read part of it. And this is a paper called Lucifer and His New Age Rebellion. And I think there's some valid points. It's been posted by Robert here.
Oh yeah, that guy, his experience, he tried to lead an expedition of trying to find the Urantia version of the Garden of Eden, the first or second one. So he tried to basically take a boat out and sonar the thing, use any sorts of modern day tools available on a boat to get readings of what was under the water. And he happened to be an avid reader of the Urantia book. So, I mean, we're talking like he's one of the biggest evangelists out there, right?
Sure.
and he happens to be Iranian. Nice irony there. But he's an American-born Iranian, and so they would say Persian. So I'm sure that makes a lot of friends. But so in his experience in his blog, he was stymied left and right by everything imaginable to sabotage the mission. He's pretty sure he was sabotaged by the powers that be, these things that you say are, secret people. But in some sense, you see it even in war justification. The story goes to press, it's going to go, and then an editor says no. Table that story, don't run it. That's not the party line. We need to support the president. That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In the same vein, people like through Coptic politics, don't let this guy go out there. And if he does, we're going to frame it the way we want to frame it. So ultimately, the mission went through, but then he gets pretty much flamed all over the History Channel of a mission failure. That's not where the Garden of Eden is. Next. So you see how successful that was?
Yeah.
So that's where he's coming from in his perspective.
And he's talking about the Urantia book, and what we're talking about is common sense, and are witness and testimony to that Urantia book also.
Sure, but I mean, if you talk about channeling or anything that you and I have looked into or semi-experienced or whatever, I'm not going to have any part of that. And so it's not part of his thing at all. In fact, he's kind of editorially hostile to it, like a lot of said Urantia book readers are. And what they don't know as a community is what a microcosm of a movement they are. And I'm not very pleased as a person, having looked back at all the activities that they did and continue to do in the name of unity. I don't think they represent the truth in that book as much as they think they do. You know, if a couple thousand people get together and claim that they're the Urantia book and go around, you know, if you don't fit into any of their mainstream views, then you're not allowed to do it. In fact, they sued everybody. I mean, this is all before my time. Mm-hmm. But there were some huge rifts, and it has absolutely a lot to do with the kind of phenomenon that we're looking into, and the messaging that we're running into in the New Age movement, and these phenomenons. So yeah, I mean, it's all relevant. I mean, there's people all out there, in the military. It gets really strange because apparently there is mind control. There is advanced exotic weaponry. There is historical precedent of testing everything on the citizenry first and clandestinely, whether it's mind control and or exotic weaponry or chemical weapons or whatever. I mean, you name your poison and there's a conspiracy for it and evidence for it, both motive, tangentially, whatever it seems to be.
Yeah, you're talking about things that have gone before courts and been proven.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's really not a secret that the military has run tests and that these things really exist. But it's easy for them to say it doesn't, or not say anything about it at all, and again, frame it in the context of all those crazy people.
Yeah, pretty much. So, in some sense, it's like, here's the market share that you're up against. You're up against the state propaganda machine that doesn't even legitimize the endeavor of a search for truth. And then it gives you a state religion that passes for secular best practices, but it's not secular by definition. It's secular and secret and esoterically to only the initiated. And so that's what's so interesting about a new and updated system taxonomy and labeling of a Christianity with a divine Christ with loving mother spirits. When you talk about the divine feminine, the mother spirit is a critical component of that truth. But here's what I get out, going back to the market share thing. How cool is it for the Christian who believes in the way they do, that with their labels and their worship, to have a fight dominated, like a fight, let's just say all of culture and society in the world, that's dominated by a Luciferian perspective. And so you have white wizards battling the secret, asshole dark wizards who may or may not even be humans. Right? They might be off-worlders or Nephilim or fallen this or that. Who knows? And so essentially, it's okay to have that fight for the elites, in my opinion. It's okay to have this false fight as long as they get to frame it. And so, what I don't think is fair in the market is to, what I'm saying, call the kettle black. You can't have a thing like a zeitgeist movement, belittle Christianity, and then offer a New Age Luciferian religion as an alternative that, when their evidence for religious domination is the very version of Christology that they supported in the first place. So to say that, it's a pagan sun god, here worship our New Age pagan religion, I mean, what the fuck? And so that's what Robert's article is about too.
Well, let me get back to Robert's article right here. And as we will see throughout the course of this paper, the fallen beings were and still are brilliant beings that on the surface seem quite benevolent, and their utterances seem quite spiritually enlightened to the unlearned. The path to hell was literally paved with good intentions. At the time of the beginning of the rebellion, a planetary ruler by the name of Caligista was in charge of our world, Urantia. He is now called the devil, after he followed Lucifer and Satan into open rebellion against God and thrust our world into utter confusion and pain. According to the Urantia papers, Lucifer openly challenged the authority of God's government as it hailed from paradise, and defined himself as the sole authority for our local universe sector, assigning Caligista and other planetary ruler who followed him into rebellion as the god of their individual worlds. So I don't know how much that actually differs from the mainstream Christian belief, because all I ever heard was that there was God and there was the devil was bad, God's good. And don't ask. It was pretty much the line growing up. I'm open to such things, and had enough of a religious background that if it didn't get through to me, who's as mainstream as anybody, I can't imagine it gets through to anybody. So
yeah, why gets through?
A message like this. So my point was, okay, so there's this message, which is the Urantia slant on things, and I was saying right now, I still don't know, as a person who grew up in Christian tradition, what the real line is on Lucifer, Satan,
right. Well,
the devil.
Have you ever had people like, certainly you get religions are prone to outreach into their neighborhoods and knock on your door, right?
Yes.
Many of us have had the experience of, say, a Mormon or a witness, or somebody handing out literature in the downtown street, or receiving an email from a Christian church or something, right? Mm-hmm. And then you also have other communities that are more prone to metaphysical pagan / beliefs, where you might have an astrology shop, or a community of tattoo artists / witches or something, in that kind of a district. Mm-hmm. So you have all sorts of, religious communities, and I think that's how people do, to some extent, get introduced. I mean, I'm from Seattle, and I probably have more of that going on in my city than where you live. Maybe that's a part of your experience. But I think the benefits of a metropolitan city is you get exposed to more religious viewpoints just based on the people you work with, for one. I don't know. What do you think?
Middle America is more like my experience. You mean more vanilla and less diversity?
Yeah, I mean, because to some extent, it's also a propaganda thing. Anything to quell the inherent urge to go Godward, or find out, or bridge that gap between spirit and matter. So people adopt all sorts of metaphysical beliefs, whether they get told any or not, don't you think? So to some degree, what you're saying is everyone's exposed to Christianity, of course, or God, versus the devil, or belief in God, a belief in Creator, and you're taught that. And I'd say, what's so complex about understanding that you ultimately don't need sacrifice or guilt?
There you go.
For salvation. It's just you desiring these inherent urges, these God urges, and that's the inner process.